Let's talk about all the different vessels Kenny has given brain to. And I'm not going to pause because you know what? The lobotomy has gotten to me just like it's gotten to you guys. But you know what? It's over. We got leaks tonight. In all seriousness, let's talk about all the different vessels he's piloted in a rough timeline of the events. But if you're an anime only, this will contain spoilers, so you've been warned. Alright, so let's start as far back in the timeline as we know, and this character right here is the earliest Kenjaku vessel that we've seen. This was an unnamed character, but this was the guy who made the binding vow with Kashimo and presumably a bunch of the other incarnated sorcerers. This was roughly 400 years ago from the present of the JJK universe. The next vessel that we're aware of is Noritoshi Kamo, the original one, and this took place about 150 years ago from the present timeline of JJK, which means there's about 250 years unaccounted for between this guy and the previous one we just saw. So how many potential bodies did he have during that? Who knows? Next, we jump forward another 130 or 140 years, and Kenjaku is in Kaori Itadori, Yuji's mother. So once again, we have a massive time jump there where Kenjaku was presumably at least in a body or two between Kamo and Kaori, but we have no information on this. And then finally, we have Kenjaku's most recent vessel, Geto, whom he took over after the events of Jujutsu Kaisen 0, which took place in 2016, or roughly a year or two before the current events of JJK. And that leads us to this question from Tokudoku, who asks, do I think Kenny jumped straight from Kaori to Geto? And if this were the case, what kind of impacts on the narrative would there be if Kenjaku had to keep up the facade of being Yuji's mother for X amount of years of his life? So let's take a look at the timeline really quick. Again, we know that Kenjaku took over Geto in 2016 after the events of Jujutsu Kaisen 0, and we know that Yuji was born in 2003, and that's when we got the reveal of Kaori with the scar. So the last time we saw her, 2003, which means there's a 13-year gap there where we don't really know what Kenjaku was up to before he took over Geto. Now, for my money, I assume he was just in Kaori that whole time, because there's no apparent reason for why he would have needed to swap between those. So I would imagine he was just in Kaori behind the scenes, plotting, doing his thing, right? I don't think there would have been any impacts on the narrative per se, because Kaori didn't raise Yuji by herself, right? We know that Yuji's grandfather raised him. So Yuji didn't know his mother at all. We don't really know what happened to his father, but for all intents and purposes, he became an orphan, right? So that's why his grandmother raised him, and I think Kenjaku, was just, up to no good for 13 years, waiting for his chance to take over Geto. But in any case, there are a lot of interesting gaps in the timeline, right? I want to know what he was up to in the past, especially what was original Kenjaku like, and how old is he? We know that, the 400 years ago is the earliest vessel we have, but we know he lived back in the Heian era, which was 1,000 years ago, and he might have lived far earlier than that for all we know. So even though Kenjaku is seemingly out of the picture of the story for now, although I have my hopes that he might come back, I hope even if it's just a flashback, we get some more information filled in on this dude's just insane history. And then real quick, I'm also going to answer this question from Jack, who wants to know if I think Hidden Inventory Gojo pre-awakened, meaning no RCT, red, purple, or domain, could exorcise Rika from JJK 0. And this is really tough, but I gotta say no. I think Rika would win that fight. Now, the important things here are that Gojo does have Infinity, obviously, even if he doesn't have any of the other things, and Rika presumably has no way to get through Infinity. So it would be a battle of attrition. Rika would have to fight Gojo so long that even with his cursed energy efficiency because of the 6 eyes, he would ultimately run out, get fatigued, and then Rika would kill him. That's how I think it would go, and how long are we talking here? Are they going to have a 3-day battle and Gojo never gets any help or anything? I guess, but I just, don't see how he's going to deal with Rika, because even fully adult Gojo makes mention of how powerful Rika is, and I think fully adult Gojo could handle Rika really easily, don't get me wrong, but there's just a lot of comments made about Rika's strength and how a curse like that is almost impossible to exercise. You instead need to unravel the curse, which is what we see happens in JJK 0. But again, Gojo without RCT, meaning he can't use positive energy against Rika, without his domain, I don't think he can get it done. I think ultimately he will fatigue and then Rika will win. I just don't think he's going to be strong enough to really put her down in his pre-awakened teen state. But I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on this. And then I've got this question from Carlos, who asks, hypothetically, how strong would Toji be if he was born with a heavenly restriction and the 10 shadows? Would he be able to tame Maharaga? And on the power scale, where would I rank him? So Toji was already built different, right? And we're going to give him one of the most powerful curse techniques on top of that. He is definitely rising amongst the ranks for sure. You got to remember that Toji was also like a battle IQ genius. Like, he was a great strategist. So we give him the versatility of the 10 shadows, again, combined with his insane physical stats. I think he can definitely beat Maharaga, especially if we're giving him access to his cursed tool arsenal as well. But I think he could honestly get it done even without the cursed tools, as long as he's heavenly restricted and 10 shadowed, if that makes sense. Now, where would I rank him on the power scales? He still loses to Sukuna and Gojo easily, I would say, but I think he's right in the mix with all of the other heaviest hitters in the verse besides those two. Anyways, y'all, that's it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. And again, we got leaks tonight, so if you haven't already, join the Discord and join us for that chaos later. I'll see you guys tonight.